Now the latest ITV News in London with Duncan Golestani.
Tonight, the murdered NHS worker caught up in London's gang wars. David Gummer had nothing to do with gangs, but was killed by 4 men determined to find a victim. Today, his family watched as they were found guilty.
Nothing will bring back a life that was so full of promise and hope, a life that was brutally taken away from us, but we are grateful now that we can begin to mourn and build a fitting legacy for David.
Also on the programme, I thought he was going to stab me. The evidence from the officer who shot dead the Streatham terrorist before he attacked more victims. Chelsea honours its first black player with a suite at Stamford Bridge, but Paul Canaville says more needs to be done.
Solutions need to be discussed, and that's with the FA and Premiership in regards to the racism, and it has to be done now.
And out of the Love Island villa and out of quarantine, we talked to singer Mabel about performing her new music. Good evening. The killing of David Gummer was entirely random. The NHS worker was not part of a gang and he did not know the 4 gang members who killed him. He was on the phone to his girlfriend on the way to the supermarket when he was attacked, stabbed multiple times. The motive, one gang in Newham wanted to send a message to another. Jurors heard it was a petty but fatal game of one-upmanship played out on the streets of London. Afterwards, one of the defendants made cartoon drawings of the murder. Today, as the 4 men were found guilty, his family paid tribute to a charismatic and intelligent young man. Ria Chatterjee reports.
CCTV cameras must pick up footage like this all the time. People going about their day. People like David Gummer here, walking to the shop one night last April. And just 15 minutes before, this man makes a narrow escape. He's chased by the men who killed David Gummer. They were looking for anybody. They left a family facing the unimaginable.
David's murder is without a doubt the hardest thing my family and I have been through. It is something that no family should ever go through. While this has been painful beyond words, I am beyond grateful to God that today we have seen justice.
Out east, one Sunday, 4 men aged between 17 and 23 set off with knives in a stolen car fitted with false number plates. The defendants, one too young to be shown, went into enemy territory, the trial heard, looking for a rival. They found David Gummer, someone they didn't know, a passerby who they targeted for no reason. He'd just left home, he was on his way to the supermarket, and he was on the phone to his girlfriend, who heard the gang say to him, "Where are you from?" And then she heard a scuffle. And take a look at these drawings found in the bedroom of one of the defendants. They detail a location, clothing symbols, and in this one, what appears to be the victim with a speech bubble saying, "I'm not involved, please don't stab me."
He'd illustrated what had occurred that evening, their actions before the murder, their actions during the murder and afterwards.
What do you think that shows?
The drawings from Touré showed that he had no remorse for his actions whatsoever. This case highlights the tragedy of postcode wars and gang rivalries.
David Gummer was 24 years old, working for the NHS.
Nothing will bring back a life that was so full of promise and hope, a life that was brutally taken away from us, but we are grateful now that we can begin to mourn and build a fitting legacy for David. Thank you.
David's mother wrote those words, but just found it too hard to read them out. Ria Chatterjee, ITV News.
The officer who shot dead a terrorist in Streatham told the inquest into his death that he feared for his life. Suresh Aman ran towards armed surveillance officers with a knife after stabbing 2 people on Streatham High Road last February. Sam Holder was in court to hear today's evidence.
The officers assigned to follow convicted terrorist Suresh Aman were briefed that he could carry out an attack. In the 2 days before he did, he began acting suspiciously, walking extremely slowly, suddenly changing direction, then changing direction again. What appeared to be crude attempts at avoiding surveillance. On the 2nd of February 2020, he entered this shop on the bottom right. The surveillance team were concerned. One radioed saying, "They sell knives." Another was told to follow him inside. But just as he approaches, Sudeshaman runs out, in his hand, an 8-inch knife. He stabs 2 people. Although the surveillance officers following Sudeshaman were armed with pistols, they weren't trained on how to fire on moving targets. And at the time of the attack, Sunday afternoon, the streets here were filled with shoppers. The inquest heard he was too far away for tasers to be effective. One officer fired his gun, but it missed, hitting the window of this Lidl. The officer, known as BX75 to protect his identity, chased Sudeshaman, who turned, and they came almost face to face. He told the inquest, "He seemed fixated on me. We locked eyes on each other. He was so close to me and moving with a knife that I was in immediate fear of my life. I fired at his chest, a single shot." Alongside BX75 was another officer, BX87, who also fired a shot. In court today, he struggled to recount what happened, appearing overcome with emotion, saying he feared he would die. But in the end, the officers did manage to stop Sudeshaman before he killed anyone. Sam Holder, ITV News.
A 15-year-old girl has died in hospital 4 days after being in an accident at a go-karting centre in Barking. Police were called to capital carts on Ripple Road on Friday afternoon. The teenager was taken to a major trauma centre. She died yesterday. Police say inquiries are ongoing. Heathrow has recorded its highest monthly passenger total since the coronavirus pandemic hit. More than 1.5 million passengers travelled through the airport in July after international travel restrictions were eased. The airport has called for the cost of COVID tests to be reduced to allow more people to travel. A man has been charged with the murder of a 23-year-old. Michael Fadabi was stabbed in the neck in Stratford last Friday. 2 men and a 19-year-old woman have been arrested on suspicion of assisting an offender. A bus careered off the side of Whetstone High Road in Barnet this morning. The crash happened at around 9:40 a.m. An ambulance checked 2 people, but no one was taken to hospital. Next tonight, the British swimming team had its most successful games in Tokyo for more than 100 years. For many of the competitors, the Crystal Palace National Sports Centre was an important venue at some point in their careers. No surprise then, athletes and locals are furious it's been closed since March last year, waiting for repairs. More than 30,000 people have now signed a petition calling for its reopening. Simon Harris has been inside to find out what's taking so long.
The Crystal Palace pools are in a sorry state. They haven't seen a swimmer or diver since March 2020. Just days before the first lockdown, they were drained because of a leak. A crack was discovered in an underwater window, and it's going to cost almost £1.3 million to put right. Eden Chang from Streatham came 7th in the women's 10-metre synchro in Tokyo. Crystal Palace is where she began diving.
I was into gymnastics. That was the sport that I wanted and I loved to do. So without this pool and without the club, I wouldn't be standing here.
Eden joined a club set up by Jill Snowd and her Olympic diver husband Chris.
The Olympics have made children seeing the Olympic Games want to take up the sport, asking their mums and dads, please can I go diving? So they're contacting us. I'm trying my best to accommodate them, but we don't have a diving pool.
It's another sad chapter in the recent history of this site.
Long before the Olympic Park was even a dream, Crystal Palace was the jewel in the crown of London's sporting facilities. A world-class centre of excellence, not just for swimming and diving, but also athletics.
The National Sports Centre at Crystal Palace cost £2.75 million, but it should be worth every penny.
Crystal Palace opened in 1964. Alongside the pools was an athletics track which would host international competitions. But the years haven't been kind and there's now an air of decay.
Rats on the indoor track, trees growing out of the stadium, and now you've got dry swimming pools.
Why should money be spent on facilities here when there are first-class facilities in the Olympic Park?
well, not everybody can make the Olympic Park, quite simply. It's a matter of geography.
You think about our Olympic success and we're so proud of that, but we need somewhere where people can come and train so that we're creating the next generation of swimmers. And actually, if we lose a facility in South East London, we're never going to get it back again.
More than 30,000 people have signed a petition calling for the pool to reopen. It's a decision for Sadiq Khan, and today he was optimistic.
I'm hoping over the course of the next few weeks to give an open date. It's been delayed, of course, by the pandemic, which slowed down some of the work. Clearly, we can't reopen the pool in the centre if there's any concerns around safety.
Crystal Palace is one of 5 pools in London closed since the pandemic and now facing uncertain futures. It's not a good look for a city with ambitions to host another Olympics. Simon Harris, ITV News, Crystal Palace.
Well, all this week we've been speaking to Olympic medalists home from Tokyo and reunited with family and the coaches who helped them get to where they are today. Tonight we're with cyclist Ethan Hayter, who has returned to Herne Hill Velodrome with a silver medal won in the Madison. Toby Sadler is there for us now. Hello, Toby. Are they still celebrating?
They really are celebrating, yeah. It's obviously really exciting to have an Olympic silver medalist here. Lots of youth races going on around us, so perfect to see someone of Ethan Hayter's stature here to inspire them. So, Ethan, great to have you here. Let's first look at the medal. This is traditional. Hold it up. Let's get a good butchers at that.
Lovely.
Impressive to have. So this is for you. This is where it all started, right?
Yeah, I started, it was around the start of 2012. I was 13 and I came down on the Saturday morning and got a bike out of the shipping containers, a hire bike, and it all went from there.
On those first few rides, what were you thinking? Were you bitten by a bug, or was it just, I could be doing this, I could be playing football, you know?
I was doing other sports at the time, yeah, and it was, I just found it really fun from the start. You know, I was, obviously, I was quite talented at it and I was beating my friends, and that makes things quite fun. So it is a bug, yeah, you come down and it's addictive.
And what's it like coming down here now with a silver medal around your neck? It must be slightly surreal to be standing here with that now.
Yeah, it's strange. Like, I don't feel that different, but now I come down and I'm treated almost like a celebrity within Herne Hill. So it's special, yeah.
So let's talk about how you got the medal. Talk about that race. Now, for people outside cycling, every time we describe a cycling race, it always sounds bonkers. 200 laps of the track, a sprint every 10 laps, and it was a real roller coaster for you. Talk us through the race.
Yeah, the Madison is mental. Yeah, it's a bit of a spectacle with 2 riders changing every couple of laps and 15 teams. So we started hard and we were actually leading the race for the first third, I think. We both had a bit of a rough patch, but came good at the end and scored big in the last couple of sprints.
And so when you crossed that line knowing you had the silver, is it possible to, was there a sensation thinking I've done it, or was it, what's it like? It's feeling numb, I guess.
I was just quite tired at the time, to be honest, and you kind of catch your breath and you look up at the scoreboard, because obviously it takes a little time to update, and you're like, oh wow, we've actually, because there was a long time where we looked like we'd drop out the medals completely. I was like, oh, that's a bit shame, but that's just cycling sometimes. And then no, we finished really well and looked up and we were second, and quite close to the gold medal as well. Nice. But we were both really happy with that. Yeah.
I like your very British, matter-of-fact way of describing it.
Yeah.
So let's frame you for people who didn't know you before the Olympics. So you are a hugely successful young cyclist, signed for Ineos Grenadiers, which, you know, comparing to a football teams like a sort of Chelsea or Man United. So for you, a big road career ahead, you know, Grand Tours perhaps. Where do you see yourself going? And with, I guess, Paris 24, there's Olympics coming up as well.
Yeah, I'm not completely sure, to be honest. I'm quite versatile. I'm doing well on the road and doing well on the track in the same year, for example. And I think I'll just keep my options open. And obviously Paris is only 3 years away. And I would be quite excited to race again there, obviously.
Right. Great to talk to you. We're 22, it's all to play for. So, I mean, how inspiring must it be to come down here? Some of these kids are like age 10 or 11 to see an Olympic silver medalist watching you race by. I'm sure there'll be a boost from Tokyo, more people signing up down here at Herne Hill.
Let's hope so. Toby and Ethan, thank you very much. Still to come, we'll have the weather forecast for the rest of the week, plus Mabel is here to talk a summer of Love Island festivals and her new single. But first, Paul Canaville was Chelsea's first black player, and with the honour of playing for the Blues in the 1980s came torrents of racist abuse from his own fans, screaming and booing from the terraces. 40 years on, he is optimistic about the work being done to tackle racism at Chelsea. Ahead of the new season, the club has named one of the ground's main suites after him, an honour for the player he was on the pitch and the man he is off it. He's been speaking to Rags Martel.
His name is now displayed with pride.
It's the first time I've seen this, and I'm kind of more than honoured. It's like emotional as well.
But there was a time Paul Canaville wasn't made so welcome. Chelsea's first black player suffered racist abuse from fans and teammates.
What was it like being a Chelsea player and being abused by your own fans and even your own players?
Difficult, hurtful. It made me have to play twice as good or twice as better than my teammates just to try to be accepted. That's how I felt. It was always a battle. Don't get me wrong, it was a battle.
Canaville joined Chelsea in 1981, but was forced out after 5 years after a dispute with a white player. Now fans affectionately call him King Canners, and the club have underlined their respect for him by naming this suite after him.
Do you think this is a way of the club saying sorry to you in some form?
Oh, that's a question. Could be, don't know. I think the club recognises, most definitely, as that was the old regime, this is the new regime.
In the 80s, DJ Trevor Nelson watched Canaville play and heard the abuse.
As glorified and fantastic and incredible as football is today, it's had a lot of flaws in the past. And this is one of them. And I think Chelsea, this is them getting down on one knee and saying, we are sorry, let's move forward. Since Paul, we've had some incredible black iconic players at this club. We had the first black manager to lift the FA Cup in Ruud Gullit. One of our icons is Didier Drogba. I think we've had more successful black players at this club than any other club in terms of what they've achieved. So, yeah, if they ignored him, it would be wrong. It would be really wrong.
He loves Chelsea. He's been an advocate for Chelsea, and he's been very loyal to them as well. Considering what he's been through, he's never left their side. So well done, Paul.
He did go through a lot, yes, and I'm very proud that Chelsea did acknowledge him for what he did in those days when he was going through a rough time.
When you were getting racist abuse from your own fans, would you, at that moment, ever imagine there'd be such a big suite named in your honour?
I would never thought that. You know what, it's an honour. Today is emotional for me, really. Yeah, here we are, Canaville Suite, and a big suite, one of the biggest suites in Chelsea, Stamford Bridge.
And 40 years after his debut against Crystal Palace, Chelsea face the same team this Saturday. Rags Martel, ITV News, Stamford Bridge.
And away from Stamford Bridge, Chelsea are in action tonight in the UEFA Super Cup, whereas winners of the Champions League, they take on the winners of the Europa League, Villarreal. It's being played in Belfast. Kick-off is at 8 o'clock and fans have already started arriving. Ruth Gorman sent us this update a short while ago.
Good evening from Windsor Park ahead of one of the biggest sporting events to ever hit Northern Ireland. It is, of course, the Super Cup final. It is the start of the European football season and it doesn't get much bigger than the Champions League winners Chelsea against Europa League champions Villarreal. We have, of course, seen big names here in Belfast before. The likes of Ronaldo and Beckham have played here against Northern Ireland. But this is the biggest club game of football to ever come here. And it is, of course, in front of the biggest crowd since before the pandemic hit last year. 13,000 lucky fans have got a ticket for tonight's showpiece. For those who didn't get a ticket, well, they've been roaming around Belfast over the past couple of days to try and get a glimpse of their heroes. Chelsea were last here in 1999. They played a charity match after the Omagh bombing. It is their 5th Super Cup final. They've won it in 1998 with the likes of Zola and Dennis Wise. Those greats, that team were amazing. But they've lost 3 Super Cup finals since then. They are favourites, though, coming into tonight. There's a different feel in the air. Everyone's full of optimism in blue shirts. And, of course, the sun is shining after rain all day. So it's a great occasion here in Belfast. Thomas Tuchel, though, he's brought some sort of winning mentality to this team. He came in January and won the Champions League in May. Not many managers can say that. That night he wore his lucky shoes, and there was, of course, footage of players drinking out of those lucky shoes after the Champions League win in Porto. So I wonder, is he wearing those lucky shoes here tonight? Kick-off in Belfast is at 8 o'clock.
With Gorman in Belfast there. Our next guest is fresh out of the Love Island villa, but she didn't have to endure the indignity of recoupling or getting pulled for a chat. I do know what these phrases mean. She was instead there to perform her new single, Let Them Know. Praise indeed. Mabel was nominated for 4 Brit Awards last year and won Best British Female Solo Artist. Let's say hello then to Mabel. Mabel, I mean, what's better, winning a Brit or being on Love Island? I don't know.
Wow, that's a difficult one. They were both big moments for me.
So what was it like when you went in there? How did it all work?
So I went in there. I obviously wasn't allowed to get too close to them, but I performed for them.
That comes from your second album, which is out soon. Tell us about that.
I've been working on a body of work, yes. My first album came out in 2019, so it's time to come back with new music, and I do feel like I'm back with probably my favourite music that I've made so far. I think I feel confident, and I just want people to feel good about themselves, and that's what I'm here to do. So I'm hoping that the music says that.
Back with new music and back performing again. You were at the Latitude Festival. What was that like? Finally, festivals happening again.
Felt incredible to be back on the stage. Honestly, seeing fans again, like just being with people and just feeling that energy from the crowd. Honestly, it was incredible. Like, I've missed it so much. I will never take a show for granted ever again.
Are you planning any tours?
Definitely, you know, when the time is right, I want to go back out onto the road. I haven't been on tour since the beginning of 2020, so I'm very excited to do so. But right now, it's all about letting them know, and yeah, the music that's to come.
For anyone that doesn't know, you come from an amazing musical family. Not just your mother, who is Nina Cherry, of course, but it goes back generations, doesn't it? Just how important was music in your home when you were growing up?
Music was everything. It really was, you know, the sort of heartbeat of my family. It was the way that we expressed our love to each other, you know, by showing each other records and bonding over music. And my parents encouraged me to pick up instruments and to express myself. And, you know, it really still is a very central part of our family.
And Mabel, wonderful to have you on the programme. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Mabel there. The ITV News continues at 6:30. Here's a look ahead now with Lucrezia.
Coming up, a British man's been arrested in Germany accused of spying for Russia. He works at the British Embassy in Berlin and is suspected of selling top-secret documents. We'll have the latest. Also ahead, the terrible waste of perfectly good food, why thousands of tonnes are thrown away instead of donated. Plus, a passionate Parisian welcome for the world's best paid footballer. Join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
OK, let's get a reminder now of our top story in London this evening. And 4 gang members have been found guilty of the murder of an NHS worker in East London. David Gummer was 24. The jury was told he was the victim of petty one-upmanship between gangs. On to the weather forecast now. Let's have a look. Here's Amanda Houston with the details.
Making the most of it, whatever the weather. Octopus Energy sponsors ITV London weekday weather.
Hello there. Well, weather-wise, it's been fairly quiet across the capital throughout today, and there's more conditions like this to come as we go through the next few days. So give or take the odd shower. For most of us, it will be largely dry out there, and there will be more sunshine, albeit it will be fairly hazy at times. So let's take a look at the bigger picture, where you can see as we go through tonight and into tomorrow, we have got this very weak system sinking its way southwards across the UK. So that's going to introduce a bit more cloud out there. And we've also got low pressure here, but it is going to be dominating across northern areas, which will bring some outbreaks of rain and some strong winds. But it looks like for us, we will avoid that and stay mostly dry. Now, as we go through this evening and tonight, it's a mixture of cloud, clear skies. There will be a few pockets of shallow mist and fog in places. And then you can see overnight, this band of clouds starts to edge its way further towards us. So a bit of a grey start to the day tomorrow morning, but it will be mild out there. Temperatures not falling below 14 degrees tonight. And then perhaps a odd shower as we go through the morning. But for most of us on Thursday, it is looking like it will be a dry day, some bright or sunny spells, especially across southern areas. Those winds continuing to feed in from a south to southwesterly direction, so it's going to feel rather pleasant. Temperatures there to around 24 or 25 degrees. And then as we move through the next few days, well, it's a similar setup really. So at this stage, it looks like it will be staying mostly dry, or the weekend we might see a little bit of rain at times, but overall light winds and temperatures roughly around average for the time of year. Bye-bye.
Octopus Energy sponsors ITV London weekday weather.
If you enjoy the sport of climbing, then obstacles are there merely to be overcome. But while rocks are one thing, attitudes are another. When Hannah Zia started as a child, she realised nobody else on the wall looked like her, and her mum, wearing a full-length hijab, stood out more than most. As Emma Walden has been finding out, it didn't stop either of them. Far from it.
For 18-year-old Hannah Zia, Romford Rock and Boulder is the perfect hangout. The Hainault teenager began climbing 10 years ago when her mum took Hannah and her older brother to an indoor climbing wall. Having struggled to click with more mainstream sports, the bouldering bug quickly took hold.
It was one of the friendliest welcomes, but it's also one of the sports when we first started that was the most kind of
so does this service still have a place
and less
in the
mixed? So even though we had this lovely welcome, we were still kind of not very much the norm coming into that, bearing in mind my mum at the time was wearing kind of full head to toe hijab, clutching my brother and I, two little brown kids. But yeah, they were really lovely. They invited us in, and it was actually them which didn't see any kind of barriers with my mum.
With climbing featuring at the Olympic Games for the first time in Tokyo, Hannah is now hoping to share her passion for this all-round workout with more women and girls.
Yeah. Put pressure on it, put pressure on it, put pressure on it. Yeah, good girl.
One young climber already following in Hannah's footholds, her 11-year-old sister, Mariam.
Mariam, you obviously love hanging around up there. What is it about climbing that's so special?
I just love that I can come back for more. There's always someone like a coach or even my sister that can help me and support me and always level up my work.
Alongside aspirations to climb for Team GB, Hannah now has high hopes for more diversity in the sport.
Still with the outdoor climbing and, you know, where most climbers want to be, because the demographic that certainly in the UK, as you go out into more green spaces, the areas do get predominantly more white. So in terms of that translating from the indoors to the outdoors, and we're seeing kind of more competent Black and Asian minority ethnic people on the rock rather than kind of on the plastic, that would be amazing too.
Hannah Zia speaking to Emma Walden there. Before we go, how much would you pay for a slice of 40-year-old wedding cake? A piece of Charles and Diana's has just fetched £1,850 at auction. It was given to a member of the Queen Mother's household who kept it preserved in cling film. But the successful bidder has been advised in advance that they should not attempt to eat it. And that's it for now. We'll be back with our late update tonight. Up next, Lucrezia's here with the evening news. Bye for now.